Welcome to Humans of Business, the podcast where we uncover the human side of successful businesses. Here we speak with business leaders about the human trait that fuels success and how embracing who we are can shape the way we do business. So every business starts with a human. Let's learn from real humans, one story at a time. My name is Yuri. I help people and brands shine through communities and personal connections. And my guest is Oliver Gehrman, an expert who's gone a path from translating UGO cards and managing gaming communities to building a thriving web design and marketing agency, NextUp.de, where he helps businesses grow online through professional website, SEO, and content strategy, who also deals with procrastination by streaming real client projects on YouTube and even turns it into a client acquisition channel. So welcome, Oliver.
Oh, thank you so much, Yuri. It's a very nice introduction.
I've already learned so much from you, and I still can't wait to learn even more. So let's jump to the first question. So tell me one thing about you that I can't find on your LinkedIn profile.
That you can't find on my LinkedIn profile. Oh, I think there's quite a few things. I don't think there's anything about my background that I grew up in a super small town with just like 1,000 people. I mean, you probably know this. I think I mentioned this, but it's definitely not on my LinkedIn. So it's one of the most interesting aspects if you're from the countryside and then you make the conscious decision to move to the city because you really know both worlds. You know that the downsides of the countryside. That's very often why you leave the countryside. And then when you end up in the city, you then learn about the upsides of the countryside, which you never were even aware of that they were there. So I would say this is like one of the more interesting aspects because people often don't expect that. Especially if you're like someone who has been traveling the world a little bit, in my case, mostly for trading card games, they will just assume you're from a city, and then you tell them, no, I'm like from the smallest of towns. Suddenly see the world with different eyes.
What's the difference when people think that you are from a small town or from like a big city? How do they perceive you?
Yeah, I think that community aspect that kind of unites both of us. I think we're very similar in that regard. That we love building communities, that we build friendships, even with clients. Very often, most of my clients I would consider friends. Maybe not like best friends, but more like friends. And to a degree, this might go back to the fact that you grew up on the countryside because you know everybody, like literally everybody, or at least the other way around, like everybody knows you. Yeah, like you're the son of this and this guy. When you grow up, everybody will like tell your grandmother if you did something, and then when you come home, even I feel like one of the greatest advantages of this is that when people are complaining about the internet and the lack of privacy that they have, I'm like, I've been having this feeling my entire life. I was on the playground beating up another kid or getting beat up by another kid. And before I felt like, how can I address this when I get home? I would arrive home and my grandmother was either already scolding me or telling me what she's going to do to the other kid. So there was no privacy in that sense because the grandmothers in the town, they had their own internet installed, which was the phone line. Okay, but still, everybody would know everything about you anyway. So when people were like, "Oh my God, this guy has my personal information," I was like, I'm used to this. This is just another Tuesday for me.
My whole life is a personal information for someone.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Don't tell
What is
me.
privacy even? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the most like because people are surprised when you take like a genuine interest in them very often because when you're in the city, my aunt told me this once. She said when she moved to Würzburg, which is like the next big city and actually the regional capital of this area of the country where I'm from, she would walk through the pedestrian zone in the middle of the city, and then she would greet everybody. And because she's from a small town, the greeting in Bavaria down south is Grüß Gott, which is like I'm greeting God basically. Like basically, so it's very
Yeah.
religious in that sense,
Yeah.
very Catholic. And it's even funnier because if you do that in Berlin, which is extremely like anti-religion in general, but if so, also a bit more left-leaning, so less conservative, definitely a lot less conservative. If you do that in Berlin and you tell somebody, "Hey, greet God," they just gonna tell you, "Yeah, from me too," because they are so not familiar with the entire concept of that this is a greeting in the first place.
Oh, you reminded me, it's funny, but I recently saw some video. It was kind of like a joke, but like half joke when person it was about the UK. Person from this small city came to London and were assaulting people by having a conversation with them. Like, hey, hello, how are you doing today? Like, what's the weather? How like I didn't know that. I'm sorry, I was assaulting people by trying to talk to them. And people like,
Yeah,
oh, I met this person. He told me good afternoon. I'm like, oh my god, what did they
yeah.
want from me?
What did I
So
do? Yeah.
yeah, so I can pretty much understand what you're talking about. And you were talking about like having approaching clients as if building friendship with them. So I'm
Well,
curious.
it's not like it starts like that from the very beginning. But people can tell when you're like very open to I'm a very straight talker. So it's not when somebody's asking me about something, I will tell them this is a really bad idea. Like I'm not gonna throw it in their face and be like, oh, this is dumb. But I even actually posted the other day about this process where I think it's important to like see where the other person is coming from. So they have an idea maybe about their website or something where they want to like change something, and in your mind you're like, oh, this is a terrible idea, and then how to go on about it. And it's a several step process, obviously, where you first try and see where's the other person coming from, what do they actually want, and then you give them examples of how you can solve this. Then you compare the examples to what they suggested. And in that process, you want to nudge them in the direction so they figure out, oh, this is a bad idea. You don't want to like tell it straight up, this is a bad idea. And yeah, this is one of the things because when I was in my small town, this wasn't an issue. Like everybody would like tell you to your face if something was wrong in the most brutal way possible. Half the time, they have specific insults that are only being used in that small town. So other people don't immediately know that this is an insult, even though it's kind of obvious. I don't even know the English translation for half the words. So this is how bad it is. So yeah, if so um, if you have like a lot of cows or something, and they produce a lot of dung, you end up with a dunghill, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they call people that. They will call each other like a dunghill, basically, in German, Misthaufen. And they even stretch the I, so it sounds even more ridiculous. And they will throw that at each other. So, in that sense, once you move out of that town, you have to get like basically to normal levels of having interhuman connection because it's not normal in that town. And then you can apply that to business too. You can
Mm.
also be like, okay, let's dumb it down a little bit, or let's not be so in your face. And then later on, when you have a bit of a connection with the other person, you can gradually become more direct and tell them, hey, let's do it the other way.
How do you know when you can be more direct?
Oh, that's a very good question. It's basically like testing the waters. You just like go bit by bit by bit, and then every time you see what happens. And it's not like I've mastered this. It's not like, hey, there's no way you can go wrong with this. But at the end of the day, for me, it's more like I will not feel comfortable if I'm not being honest with my clients. And I have told people I am the wrong person for the job, not because I didn't want to do the job. Sometimes that's also a factor, but not the main factor. It's really like I don't think this makes any sense. But if you want to really do this, you should talk to this and this person because they can tell you more about it. And then very often they would come back later to me. We
Mm.
had one project where I told the client, I think that the best approach for this project would be doing this and this and this. And I'm not a specialist in this, so you should work with this other guy. And then they said, we want to do the less ideal way because then we can work with you. So the personal connection that I had with the client in the end was more important than getting the best solution, like in quotation marks, the best solution for this particular project. So in that sense, I think that human connection is very important, and it's also very rewarding if you do it right.
You know, sometimes when you are starting your business or you are like working with a limited amount of clients, it might be very scary to kind of like let clients go. So I'm
Yes.
curious how do you approach this? How do you have this mindset of like, okay, it's not the last client, there will be more. Like, how do you feel about that?
Right. So it's not something that I did from the very beginning. In fact, at the very beginning, I was so desperate to get like any job and any client. I still vividly remember that we had a client who was owner of a store, and he wanted to have an online store, and we made him an offer that you could put the music over and say, "This is an offer you cannot refuse." We were offering him to build a website for his shop together with an online shop functionality for 300 euros. And that client said that's too expensive, which is like today, if the same guy approached me and asked me, hey, can you build me a website together with an online store, we would start talking at 7,000 euros. And just because I know what this is worth, how much it could transform his business and so on. But it's kind of interesting in the sense that it taught you the lesson that value is really subjective at the end of the day. Yes, there are things you can try and take objective measures to say how much something is worth, but at the end of the day, it's always a subjective thing, and that really helped to break some of the mental blockades that you set for yourself. Like, oh, there's no way I can charge 60 euros per hour, for example. It was one of the things that I dealt with in year 3 or 4 or something like that, very early on in comparison to where I am now. And then I worked for an agency, and they sat me down. There was a gigantic dog in the agency, more than hip level, basically. He could have jumped me very easily. And then it was a very nice dog, don't get me wrong. And then there was one person who like said hi, and then she was sitting on her desk, but she would constantly have like me in the corner of her eye. And she would be very, very like interested in what I'm doing. And they were very skeptical because they just fired the agency that was working on their website, and they were basically my precursor. And then I worked there for like 20 minutes, and they were asking questions. Hey, how can we show the images? And I'm like, hey, you can do this, and you can put borders around it, and then you can add a shadow and like a lightbox effect. And I did all of that in like 10 or 15 minutes. And I didn't realize it at the time, but they thought this was extremely impressive because their old agency was constantly just like shit talking, like, oh yeah, if we take like 3 days, we can start thinking about that. And then this other person who had been like eyeballing me for 20 minutes straight with the big dog next to her, so it felt like a somewhat threatening situation. She was like, this guy is 3 times as fast as the old guy. It's fine that he's charging 10 euros more per hour. We are not making a mistake hiring this person. And then she just got up and left the room. And that was her job for the day, basically. She just like inspected what I was doing. And then she was like giving her blessing, so to speak. And the big dog was gone. So yeah, I mean, over time you learn what you're worth. It really helps if you can afford it to outsource something every once in a while. Because every time I outsourced to another freelancer, after that I charged more money every time. I was like, if this guy is charging 50 euros an hour and what he's delivering is like this quality, and I know that my stuff is like twice as good, I can easily charge 80. And this I did this several times. Not really as an experiment, it just happened because I was flooded with work. And every time I came back with the knowledge, yeah, I'm better than most of the other guys out in the market. I don't want to like shit on them, but at the same time, like objectively speaking, we had we had situations where we had agreed on a price up front. I told them I would charge for this to the client 150. I can give you 100. And they were like, yeah, I charge 40 euros per hour. I think I'm going to take 2 hours for this. I'm like, so you can have 100, which is 50 euros per hour, but it needs to be like 100. I need to be able to plan with this. And like, yeah, should be fine. I'm charging 40 euros per hour. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's see where this is going. And then they came back with the project, and they were like, yeah, it took 4 hours for this. And I was like, okay, so I can either pay you 100, like we agreed up front, and you're gonna get more work from me because it's not terrible, but we need to like talk about this up front, or I'm gonna pay you 160 for this project, and you will never hear from me again. And they were like very consistent. Yeah, 160, and I will never hear from you again. And I was fascinated how somebody could be so short-sighted, like
Yeah.
in my opinion at least. I mean, I don't know. And I knew for a fact this was something that you could have done in 2 hours or less, like or less, if you know what you were doing. So yeah, with experience is the very short version of all of these stories. You just grow into the role basically with over time.
You know, it's interesting because I still have this in my mind that you told me on a Freelance Thrive or Freelance Sucks podcast about your 80% is 120% for your client. And I was like, I feel like it's the biggest mistake that experts are usually having. They think that they have to make everything perfect, but like, god damn it, it's like not that way. Because if you are not an expert, if you are like just as you talked about this guy who are telling like it will take 2 hours and then in like 4 hours, so yeah, it's a questionable. But if you know that you are delivering good work, sometimes it's good once again, something I learned from you, sometimes it's
Yeah,
good to
yeah.
stop at 80 and ask like, hey, here it is, what do you think about
What do
that?
you think? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
Let's
after
let's check
that,
in with the client.
because it will like save you life. Yeah, it's like,
You might also be able to deliver your full 100%, but you can ask the client if they're willing to pay more. Because
yeah,
if in their eyes you have already delivered, it's a win-win for both sides, really. You can be like, hey, I think this is great what we produced, or you feel like, hey, this is solid, but I can do this and this and this, and then the client is, wow, but it costs more money, and then yeah, if they agree, good for you. If they don't, also good for you because you know that you don't have to put any more work into this.
tell me a little more about the business that you are building at the moment.
Yeah, so at the moment we have a web design agency. We are creating websites for mostly small and medium-sized companies. And our main issue, if you have been to many of the talks of the Freelance Unlocked, but although it depends, I've heard conflicting points of view. But our main issue, what most of the consultants would say, is that we're not niching down enough. We're not, oh,
Mm.
we're like the web design agency for this particular field, and then we're only doing this one thing, and we're doing it over and over again. So this is the core challenge at the moment, and the other challenge is I know that this is a thing, but I don't really want to change. I don't really want to be like, hey, I'm only going to do websites. The other day we did a website for a landscaping business that looks kind of cool, but I don't want to do like 50 more landscaping business websites. Like the best case scenario for me would be having like 5 more landscape being business guys, and then I would just give it to one of my employees and tell them, hey, copy paste this existing website, change the contents obviously, and then create a new website for them. But I don't want to do that because for me, this is not super fulfilling. What I prefer doing, I mean, I really enjoy live streaming my work, not just because it keeps me occupied and busy with the work and focused on the work for the most part. It's also, I really like teaching. I really like explaining other people how to do this stuff. And I have some other ideas of what we can do. And basically, part of it is like an online learning community where I'm going to be teaching web design. And then the question is just how can we monetize that? Like to a degree where it really pays off because you don't want to do this having like 10 times the work than you had before with no payment for it because it's not sustainable. It's fun for a month and then you're like, I can't do this because I need to earn money.
Yeah, I feel like it's something I'm also thinking on the back of my head on how to make it. So maybe at some point we can have a proper conversation about this. And from what you've told, it sounds like that you are doing something yourself. You are building processes and then you are delegating it. Does it sound like that?
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah.
So I'm
I don't
curious.
I don't think
Yeah.
I'm the perfect boss or something. So this is like one of the areas where I feel like somebody else could add a lot more value to the business than me, just from a personality type, because I'm good at like showing off the work that we're doing. I'm also good at explaining what we're doing. But I don't like to tell people, hey, this is what you have to do until this and this day. Like I just write a ticket in our project management, and then I just assume that the other person is gonna be like, woohoo, work! I love
Yeah.
work, and they will just do it. And as soon as I have employees who I need to push,
Mm.
instead of they are asking for work, and I just give them orders. I just give them
Yeah,
tasks or
orders.
projects, yeah, and they go. Yeah, I just wish like it would be like in all of these old games like Age of Empires and whatnot.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
you clicked on a unit and they're
Click.
immediately like, what? Like, yes, sir.
Yes,
And
sir.
they wanna work right away for you. And it's not that doesn't seem to be the case most of the time.
And they change clothes right away. They get all the tools they need right away, and then just from like working on the field, they become a gold miners. So yeah, I totally
Yeah,
get it.
just imagine you're telling someone, "Hey, let's get rid of this forest over there," and they will be like, "Yay!" They start swinging the axe. Yeah, I think all of these games have been lying to us. I think that's the main issue here.
Yeah, I still need to replace some of them. Um, anyway, how do you build processes?
Yeah, so I think it's about you show how to do something. In my case, I will very often create a video about it, or worst case scenario, we just have a live stream. The downside is it's not super structured because then you are going through the process. Best case scenario, you have done this a million times, so then you can basically write a step-by-step list and have a video together with it. So people really know, okay, I just need to follow this checklist and then eventually I can do this myself. So basically what we're doing for our YouTube channel, we are also using internally very often, where I tell like one of my guys, hey, we need to do, I don't know, install a cookie banner solution on this website so it is in compliance with GDPR regulation. And here's a video how to do this. If you're running into this issue, like let me know. If you're running into that issue, here's a checklist how to resolve that issue, or here's another video in some cases. Let's go. And that's basically the best kind of process that we have, where yeah, it's very clear what you have to do. There's a checklist. You can just check off all of these things. Then it automatically goes to bookkeeping, and then in an ideal world, you automatically get the invoice at the end of it.
You know, it's amazing. I didn't think about that because you are not just sharing videos with your potential clients, but you also kind of creating this FAQ for people you are working with. So
Yeah.
they can turn to videos anytime, like go there, go there. So you build on kind of like a library for internal work, and then it's so much easier to delegate that.
Yeah. It's basically that's the long-term stretch goal project that I have, which is like a membership system. It's basically like an online agency knowledge base that we are outsourcing. Like we're making it available to everybody, and they can, in an ideal world, somebody is like 20 years. They are like, I want to start my business. I heard about web design. This sounds cool enough. I'm interested in this. And then they get access to this knowledge base, and then a client is asking them, hey, how can I migrate my website from A to B? And they will find an article with a checklist with like best practices, and if this goes wrong, do that. Together with a pricing guide and everything. So it's really like a blueprint for how to run your web design business. And this is something that I'm interested in, and I think I could provide a lot of value. But at the end of the day, the question is always: Do people are people going to be willing to pay for this kind of value?
You know, sometimes there is at least something that I'm dealing with myself. So, for example, I have some process that I spend like 10 minutes a day. And for example, it will be like 50 minutes for a week or something like that. And for example, automate takes 1 hour. And I kind of like trade the thing. I'm like, I have 10 minutes today, but I don't have 1 hour today. So I'm kind of like always every day I'm trading 10 minutes for 1 hour because if I would do it, yeah, it kind of will take 6 days of my work, kind of like 10 minutes, but then it will be like just one button click. So I'm wondering, how do you approach this thing that you are recording, you are creating a video, a guide to delegate instead of doing something that you can do really fast?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not great at time management. I would be lying if I would like suddenly tell you, oh, this is very easy. You do this and this. I think there are some really great resources by Alex Hormozy on YouTube who is mostly known as like I've learned that when you talk about his contents with other folks, they have come across some of his contents. So very often it's about scaling, 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 and becoming a millionaire. And yeah, this is kind of appealing in its own way, but he has some other contents that are very, very different. And his time management videos are really good. Because in the time management videos, like what stuck with me is he's really explaining that there are different kinds of people working in a company. And then, especially for my kind of folks, like programmers are very different kind of animal compared to like a marketing manager. Because to a
Yeah.
marketing manager, if he jumps on a meeting and he's talking with three clients or with three other departments about how to run an ad campaign or something, then this is time well spent for them. They will feel like, oh, there's no way I could have been any more productive because I now everybody's on the same page and we can have our new ad campaign, and then this is gonna generate so much money or at least exposure for the company. And to the programmer, this is the polar opposite. The programmer wants to isolate themselves, basically like with a tinfoil hat. They want to sit in their little cubicle. I mean, not ideally, but something like that. They want to have headphones on. They don't want to hear from the outside world at all. And then they just want to have like a 4 hour block where they can just dive deep into coding and do nothing else. And he explains that from the perspective of someone who is not a coder, how he had to learn that, how he had to understand that if this guy is not coming up to me and telling me, hey, I need this and this and this, that means he's currently doing really good work. And how hard it was for him to understand that. And I think this different perspectives, this really helps because this video in particular I have forwarded to some clients who would just call me in the middle of the day and they would have no understanding why I didn't like this when it wasn't important. Obviously, I mean, if your website is like burning down, okay, call me. But it was like most like basic stuff where they're like, hey, we talked about this. I opened a ticket. I gave you like 5 different points of information. You asked me 2 questions. Can we go over them real quick? And I'm like, no, I would rather you just write those 2 additional points in the ticket that we created so I can get back to it when I have time. And yeah, so very often I think like really good time management has to do with setting boundaries. Like really time boxing can help where you're really saying in this hour I'm only doing this and this. And if somebody's calling me, it goes straight to mailbox. And then you just follow that schedule that you set for yourself. I think this is one of the best ways you can do it. And then there's smaller things. I like the Pomodoro technique where you say you're working for 25 minutes and then you take like a 5 or maybe even a 10-minute break and you really take a break. You're not like, oh, I feel like I can work some more. No, you take a break, do some sit-ups or something, and then you go back to working for 25 minutes. So that's helpful. And if you can, live stream your work. Obviously, that's the biggest
Yeah.
yeah, biggest thing. But
It's a
but
hack. It's a hack.
it also has its downsides though, because like yesterday I had an hour to work on something, and I'm like I cannot fire up the live stream for 1 hour because people are going to be mad. They expect me to stream for 2.5 or 4 hours. So yeah,
It's interesting you mentioned that. How do you feel about how do you deal with people expectations?
yeah, it's also complicated. There are folks who are asking me when is the live stream gonna go like live today, and I'm kind of mad at them for asking the question because in my head I'm like, well, you should know that I want to stream as early as possible, and by asking me that, you're putting pressure on me. So like I'm building this entire construct in my head, which is not even there because half the time the guy's like, I want to go food shopping and I want to do some gardening in the afternoon, and I just want to know if I should go food shopping now or if you're gonna live stream now. And then like they want to plan their day according
Yeah.
to my schedule. So it's really nice of them in a way, and I'm getting mad at them in response. So it's stupid. Like when especially when you lay it out like that. And it's turned into a running gag where people are like, I don't I know you don't want me to ask, but I would like to blah blah blah. And then I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm often like mad at you for asking this, but yeah, at the end of the day, I try to be, I don't know, give as much of my time as I can, and it's very often it doesn't work the way that I want to.
It's interesting you mentioned that because it's something that I was dealing with. So basically, I have this thing called Between Two Water Coolers where we have meetups with community experts like every Friday. And for like 2.5, 3 years, I've done it like literally every Friday, no matter what. If it's holiday, I'm there. If it's like 31st of December, I'm there. Who cares? And there, I feel like it was only one time when I was the only one person who came. Always at least one, two people come. And recently I started to feel like this real, first of all, it's Friday evening. So like my wife hates me for that. Second, like it's hard when your wife hates you for 3 years in a row. Then it's like over and over and over and over. Basically, pretty much the same humans are coming, which is nice. I love that. I love talking to people and we're like catching up all the. And I was like, it feels so much pressure. And I have like during the week, I have like conversations, at least 10 conversations with different humans, and I'm just like, enough. It's enough.
Yeah.
I don't want to be connected with Friday. And also it's like people saying like, oh, that you can delegate maybe someone else. And literally I asked people like so many times, would you like to host it? Like if someone wants to do it, just tell me. I will just give you all the access and you can do it for me. So we can, continue
Yeah.
doing it like weekly, but nobody told like, I will do it. I will do it. I'm like, okay, from now on, we'll do it bi-weekly. So it's done bi-weekly. Then during Freelance Unlocked, it was like 3 weeks. And I was like, it looks like I can do it like once in a month, which is
Yeah.
nice. So,
Yeah.
and the funniest thing is that it's kind of like people are waiting more for
Yeah.
when it's rare than like weekly. They know, weekly, whatever. I can skip this time. I can come
If it's
another time.
always available,
But if
yeah,
it's
it's
like
not.
every month, people like are preparing for that and they're like scheduling and they're ensuring they have no other meetings. And if they have other meetings, they're really like, oh, I'm missing that. So I was like, instead of like being always there, sometimes it's good to pivot. Sometimes it's good to like really think about stuff and like, I'm doing like that. And I totally get what you are talking about. So you kind of like connected to those people because they kind of like put their expectations on you and you
Yes.
have to be there for them, even though sometimes it's not good for you. But yeah, sometimes it's better to think like what's good for you and then see how
Yeah.
it works.
It adds a lot of extra pressure that you really don't want, actually.
Yeah. And how do you feel about saying no?
Um, yeah, not that bad in a way. Because because I had to learn that. Even before I started my own business and everything, I was very agreeable. Like I would very often say yes when I didn't really mean yes. And yeah, I had a friend who was like recommending a book, which is like basically saying no without regrets or something like that. But again, I'm translating it in my head. This is the German title, and it's all about setting boundaries, like in a loving way. And they have some very crazy examples in the book where when you hear it for the first time, you're like, this is dumb. But then when you think about it some more, you're like, oh, actually, this does make sense. And some of those boundaries are like, let's say you have a sister who loves to move for whatever reason, and she spends a lot of money every time she moves from A to B, which often is the case, obviously. And then she's asking you to move, to help her move for the second or third time in 1 year. And then you will basically tell that person off, and you're gonna be like, I'm very sorry, I would love to help you, but I don't think this is good for you. And for that reason, I'm not gonna help you here because I think it's better for you if you don't move. And obviously, most people are going to be like completely in shock when you say that because
Yeah.
well, they will just assume if you don't want to help, it's because you don't feel like helping. But if you turn it around and you're like, I don't think this is good for you, and this is why I'm not going to help you. This really don't gives it doesn't give them any leg to stand on. Where because normally, especially if it's one of those emotionally unstable people who love to gaslight you, they're like, "What, don't you love me?" And then you're like, "No, I love you, and that's why I don't help you with this third move in 1 year because you're destroying your own life in the process. At least that's my opinion." And precisely for that reason, I am not going to help you. And so this has nothing to do with business. But at the end of the day, business also involves a lot of human to human interaction, and I think this is one of the most important lessons that you can learn. And this is something that I learned like in my early 20s.
Mm.
because I had a friend who was like a bit more skilled in psychology, like a lot more skilled in psychology, and he would recommend me books and introduce me to these concepts. And I think this is one of the two things that every person should have at least come across, so they can think about it every once in a while. And the other thing I learned from him was the five love languages,
Hmm.
which
Okay.
really opened up a whole new world to me, because suddenly I would understand why my parents had such a hard time, for example. And it's a lot easier to see it from the outside than or from the inside. But that was really like, it's also a really cool book because it makes for the best conversation at any family gathering. Because it applies to young people, old people, and super old people. Like some people who are like been married for like 50 years or something. Even they very often will learn something new if you tell them about the concept of the five love languages.
Mm.
So if you need an icebreaker for one of these family gatherings where you have your cousin who's like 17 years old and your aunt who's like 40 and then your grandpa who's like 85, this is the topic that can unite them all.
It's interesting. I heard about this book, but I didn't read it, which means that it's time to deal with that for me.
It's really it's like extremely recommended. If you want, I can give you a TLDR. Yeah.
I
All
like
right. So
really small,
okay,
without
really
telling
small.
everything, but like
Okay,
kind of like
without telling everything.
igniting.
The core principle is that there are five distinct ways how to tell somebody or communicate to somebody that you love them. And one would be like words of admiration when you tell them, "Oh, you're so beautiful today." It's physical stuff, which is always the choker reply for all the men out there. Like they will always say, "Oh yeah, yeah." When we're like physically together, I'm like, "Woo, I feel so loved." And then you always have to ask them the question, well, if you had physical interaction every day, when do you feel loved? And then very often it's like, oh, when my wife is doing the dishes, which is another thing, like doing these small tasks for the other person. Then it's presents, if you just give them presents. And there's always a fifth that which will always change every time when I think about it, and it will come to me in a second. It's quality time, time spent together, like we are right now. So it's not like two people sitting in front of a TV and focusing on the TV. It's focusing on each other and having a conversation. And the idea is every person has one way where they prefer to show their admiration to the other person, and they have one way where they prefer to receive love. And very often, those two are not the same. And that's the gist of it. If you go deeper, obviously, you will learn a little bit more about it. But basically, my dad was always giving presents to my mom, and my mom wanted to have a vacation together. So she wanted to spend quality time, whereas my dad would love to give presents. And they, like, for lack of better words, they were simply not speaking the same language. And that's one
Yeah.
of the main reasons why the family broke apart in the end. And that's really an eye-opening concept where you can learn so much about your partner and how to have a better relationship.
No, I feel like it's something that can work on in the relationships and also in like in your friendship, in your business clients and whatever, because it's like coming to the same vocabulary because
Yeah,
it looks like you are talking to each other but you are speaking different languages. And then
exactly.
when you have this baseline, when you really understand what everyone means, because someone can use one word, like say the word sunny, which means like it's just a bright, like a daylight, and someone will mean sunny, like it's really hot out there, like, oh, it's sunny, I'm not going out there, like, why are you not going, it's sunny. So it's like the same word but different meaning. I feel like it's always really good to be on the same page. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'll check this book. I've heard about it, but I feel like I even have it somewhere on my to read list. Now I will definitely move it forward.
Well,
Thank you,
even
Oliver.
if you even if you only take away that if your partner or your significant other is doing something where you like your immediately gut reaction is like, why are they doing this? This is not what I want to experience from them or something like that. If you then like go one step further and you realize, oh, they're doing this because they want to show me that they love me. It's just that it's not my preferred way of receiving love. So it's not like reaching me in the right way. Even just understanding that can make a gigantic difference, because suddenly you will understand, oh, I should just imagine like went to bed with me if you're a guy. Most of the time, that solves the issue. When they say, "Oh, you're looking nice today," and you're like, "Yeah, whoever, like who cares?" And then you're realizing, "Oh, this is basically their version of jumping in bed with me," and then you feel loved.
You know, I wonder what makes you happy?
Um, well, I mean, I like my work. I really like my work. Whenever I have time and I can do what I want to do, very often I'm just working, to be honest. I don't see that as a bad thing. I do have my family, so I also take my kids out every once in a while. They love Tropical Island, which is like a gigantic indoor swimming pool. They love that, and they're just like smiling ear to ear all day when we're there. So that's cool. And yeah, I mean, with my wife, sometimes we go out, and that's cool. But obviously hard with family, and then also with work. So and I do love sports. I think those are like the four things really that apply to me in my life, and they try to. I need to keep them in a balance for everybody to be happy, and then it works most of the time.
And since you told the work on the first place, I'm curious, how do you define success beyond financial metrics?
I think that if you can actually feel fulfilled from doing your work, this is like the most important thing. In some cases, obviously not in all cases, but in some cases, it's even more important than making a lot of money with it. But I mean, there's these old sayings like find something that you do loving that you love to do, and you will never work a day in your life, stuff like that. Obviously, it's a very it's a
It's
very
like
easy way.
50-50, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. There's going to be bad days as well. But if more often than not you feel like you get something out of the job that you're doing, I think you have accomplished something. And in my case, I also like the fact that I'm actually creating jobs for other folks. I don't feel like I'm exploiting anybody. I can say that with confidence.
I need to ask them.
Yeah, we would have to ask them. No, that's why I am somewhat hesitant. But I think this is a cool thing that if you create jobs and you give other people well something in their life, it depends on how much fulfillment they feel at the end of the day. But at least you're giving them the option to feel good about their work. And yeah, I think building a team, building a company, creating jobs, all of these things are very fulfilling for me.
You know, Ole, I wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question. What's one thing that you are really good at that no one knows that you are really good at?
Oof. Uh, It's a good question. Um, I think most people will know by now that I can speak in front of a microphone, so this is not like a hidden skill anymore. Um, there's a lot of people who are very surprised to learn that I'm pretty good with kids.
Okay.
They just know me as a business person, and even went as far as one of my friends who was like, "What, you're gonna be a father? That's a terrible idea." Like he was not from my hometown that I talked about earlier, but he was extremely blunt. He later changed that opinion. He later was like, "Hey, man, I was wrong," but at the time he was like straight in the face. Yes, I think this is one of the things that most people don't expect. But I feel like I'm pretty okay with it. I'm pretty okay with parenting and taking care of other people's kids as well, actually.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, well, LinkedIn works, obviously. Even though the more connections you make, the more it feels like Facebook. That's at least my personal opinion at the moment. And I think the absolute best way is to join my Discord because there you can have really cool conversations with like-minded folks about web design and about self-employment.
And last but not least, name two people I should have this podcast conversation with.
Okay, did you talk to Sandra yet?
No, not here.
Yeah, okay. So obviously Sandra is like a very, very obvious pick in my opinion. If we're talking about folks from the Freelance Unlocked. And I don't think you know Chihan as well as most other
Yeah,
people that
yeah, I know. Yeah,
you know? Okay.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if you haven't had him on that podcast, I think he always makes for a fun conversation.
Got it, Ollie. Thank you so much for this I can't call it business conversation. We kind of like started talking a little bit about that part, and then we're going to family and like personal relationship, which I really love, and I truly believe that how you speak with kids, especially how you speak with your loved ones, basically you translate this energy to the whole world. And it was really a huge pleasure for me to get to know a little bit behind this YouTube next up the great expert Ollie, but like getting more to this human, kind, great with children, and like person from the small town who has no idea what privacy is. So thank you so much for this
Yeah.
conversation.
Well, thank you, Yuri. It's always fun talking to you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, see you in the business world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.